Is the government too good, or is the coalition a rabble?
Well, look, Fran, it was always going to be difficult. The Australian people decided to elect a new government, essentially for three reasons: the longevity of John Howard, our previous government, the mistake, fundamental one we made with work choices in a bridge too far, and also the monstering around Kyoto and climate change. And having made the decision to elect a new government, Australians don't easily then start to think that maybe they got it wrong. And I think Mr Rudd, to his credit at least, has been particularly good at managing the impressions of the government and the messages from the government, and inevitably we've gone through a lot of the difficulties that oppositions do, having gone into opposition from being in government for a long period of time.
Realistically then, how long do you think it'll take before the coalition gets back into government?
Well, no one should underestimate Malcolm Turnbull, no one should underestimate the coalition. I've always been of the view, by the way, that Kevin Rudd is likely to go his full term. That's not the reason I've decided to go now, but it's been on my mind. I think that he is, in the end, a centre-right conservative of the Labor genre. He's worked very hard to build a persona which suggests that he might be different from and better than the rest of us. I find it hard to believe that he'd want to provoke the Australian people by going significantly early to a poll. So I think this has got some time to go yet, and there are some very serious issues that will need to be addressed. Obviously the government, in my view quite rightly by the way, went into deficit to try to stimulate the economy with the global financial downturn. It's the depth of that debt, however, that's been accumulated, the quality of that spend, and some of the management of some of the issues, the schools program in particular. Some of those issues will have to wash out over the next 12 months, and of course the emissions trading scheme, which is in the end a tax which will be on everybody and everything, effectively taking the, if you like, the equivalent of taking the GST from 10 to 12.5% in its first year. Some of those issues will need to wash through before we get to the polls.
Just on the emissions trading scheme, the whole notion helped sink your leadership. Yesterday you urged your colleagues not to act like intellectual lemmings on this issue. It sounds like a call to arms to reject the CPRS if it's brought back before Copenhagen. Is that clearly your view? Well,
look, Fran, it is. And look, you're an intelligent person. Your listeners are intelligent people. I think all of us, I feel very strongly about this, we have a responsibility, whilst recognising a significant body of minority, credible scientific opinion which questions it, we have a responsibility to accept the broad scientific consensus that the climate is changing and that it's largely anthropogenic. However, we have a responsibility to the next generation, not only to give them a planet in good working order, but also to maintain the strength of our economy. I ask you, what sense does it make to pass legislation when we are 1.4% of global emissions to effectively introduce a tax on everything for no environmental gain without knowing what the three major emitters in the world are going to do?
Okay.
For you and your listeners who are educated, who understand this, what the government is proposing to do is to impose a tax on everybody and everything, and in particular to capitalise on widespread community ignorance in terms of what that emissions trading scheme will actually mean.
Brendan Nelson, recently you told the Sydney Morning Herald that Malcolm Turnbull has a narcissistic personality disorder, which is a pretty serious claim. What brought you to that conclusion?
Oh, well, I'm not going to comment on any of that. Look, Malcolm Turnbull...
Well, it's a pretty serious thing to say. You are a medical doctor and you've accused him of having a narcissistic personality disorder.
Well, look, I'm not going to... Look, the only comment that I will make is that Malcolm Turnbull has many of the characteristics and qualities that we have seen in the strongest and most successful leaders over the past century throughout the world. He's intelligent, he's hard-working, he's been successful. I also told the Sydney Morning Herald and Annabelle Crabb for the essay which she did for the Monthly on Malcolm Turnbull that when he first came to the Parliament, I went to see him to give him some advice, things that perhaps I'd learned the hard way, and I made the observation that he's been far more successful in his life than I have ever been, and that adjusting to the political climate was going to be quite different. I can only say to you that I will do everything that I possibly can to support my party and to support the leader of the Liberal Party, Malcolm Turnbull, in success in the future. But I will also do whatever I can to further the best interests of Australia.
And can a person with a narcissistic personality disorder ever be Prime Minister?
Of course, and we've had a few over the years, but look, I'm not going to comment any more specifically on that, Fran.
All right, Brendan Nelson, look, thank you very much for joining us. Good luck with wherever life takes you after leaving Parliament this week. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Fran.